So last week, I put out this video, which was a 5-step plan for the Browns to get below the salary cap. And one of our viewers reached out to me and said, hey, love the video. What should the Browns do with the money they freed up in this cap space? And I felt like a big idiot because I was like, that's actually a really good point. So on today's video, we're going to talk about some of the free agents the Browns could pursue after freeing up some cap space. Now, if you'd like, you can pause this video and go watch this one first because it's not impossible to understand today's video without this prior knowledge, but I think it might help a little bit more. So we're going to jump to where we ended this video, which is after making all the moves that the Browns could do going into this offseason, they could have $51 million. So again, if you watch the previous video, you'll understand more of where that $51 million can come from. It's restructuring Deshaun Watson's contract, extending Nick Chubb, stuff like that. But I think it's important to look at the 2023 free agent signings for the Browns because it goes to show the Browns are very okay, especially the Haslams, with spending money. They spent a total of 122-ish, give or take a few thousand, $million in total free agent contracts last offseason. The Browns are okay with spending money, but that doesn't mean every single year they're going to spend $122 million because they plugged a lot of the holes they had last offseason with those signings, and I don't think they're going to be as aggressive this offseason in free agency. But still, if they do want to go all in because they realize, hey, you're not going to take down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs with some scrubs, let's go get some real bona fide stars, well, that's what today's video is all about. But before we get into that, we are at 33,361 subscribers. My goal before March 1st is to get to 33,500. We are less than 150 subs away. So I invite you all to join the channel if you have not already and get the best Browns free agency content out there. So if the Browns max out and get $50+ million in cap savings, number one move I would do is sign Mike Evans. That would be the first thing I do if Cleveland really went full throttle. And again, they don't have to. I don't think they will, but if they chose to, Mike Evans. Now, Spotrac comes out with contract projections. They are made up of the age, the stats, and other similar contracts. And they projected Mike Evans gets a 4-year, $95 million contract. That's an average of $23.8 million, and it makes him the 8th highest paid wide receiver in football. So that's at least what a contract could look like for Mike Evans, which the Browns could afford. Plus, don't look at $23 million and think that is subtracted from the cap space. Now, Andrew Berry always pushes money towards the end of contracts to maximize his spending abilities now. Now, we'll talk about what that means down the road later on for him, though. Mike Evans, though. I don't think I have to sell anyone on Mike Evans, right? He is a future Hall of Fame wide receiver. He has always reached 1,000 yards, and he comes off a 13-touchdown season. I'm sure the Bucs are going to try to bring him back, but at the same time, he wanted to get an extension before 2023 season kicked off. They couldn't get it done, and I'm sure his price has gone up since then because, well, he put up 13 touchdowns and 1,200 yards. It is ultimately, though, a nuclear arms race in the AFC to go and take down the Chiefs. And if Andrew Berry feels like we're not going to get that done if we don't have more weapons for Deshaun Watson to throw to, then who's stopping him from going out and signing Mike Evans, right? I understand that they have invested a lot of money in Deshaun Watson, and if you invest a lot of money in your quarterback, that should bring everyone up. Like Patrick Mahomes was playing with not very good wide receivers and still won a Super Bowl, but that's the luxury of having Patrick Mahomes. The rest of the league, they are all scheming and trying to think of ways to take down the Chiefs. And one way the Browns might land on is, let's go get superstar freaking players. Let's go get Mike Evans and Amari Cooper, and let's just beat them with talent and hope for the best. Now, if the Browns were to go out and sign Mike Evans, their updated cap space would be about $42 million. That's a rough estimate. I think Andrew Berry would look to have a lot of that money pushed down the road as opposed to putting it all or a lot of it this year because it's all about percentage cap hits. And the cap always goes up. And so the percentage hits for now, or when you push money down the road, goes down because there's a bigger piece of the pie out there. Okay, so let me know what your opinion is, though, on Mike Evans. Do you want the Browns to sign him? Yes or no? Do you think he still has some good juice left in the tank? Is he worthy of that big contract? Or is he old and washed and no, they should not do that? I definitely don't buy into the latter. I'm going with yes. Moving on to offseason move number 2 I would do, and that is re-sign Darius Smith. Now, yes, there are some better edge rushers out there like Josh Allen and Brian Burns, but this is also a video that keeps a level of realistic possibilities included, in which is the Browns are not going to sign Mike Evans, Chris Jones, and Josh Allen. As much as they would like to, that's not happening. But Za'Darius Smith on a 2-year, $24 million contract, that is in the cards. And I don't think he'd actually get this much. That's what Spotrac projects. I think about 2 years, $20 million. That's $10 million a season. So I'm going to disagree with Spotrac's projection. I think it's a little bit too high. But Darius Smith comes off a season where he had 27 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 15 QB hits, and according to Pro Football Focus, 61 pressures. And we as a country need to come up with a unified pressures accounting system because every single website has a different number. But I digress. Ultimately, in real estate, it's all about location, location, location. For edge rushers, it's pressures, pressures, pressure. If you can generate pressure on the quarterback, sure, that might not always result in a sack, but it more often than not results in a blown play for the offense where the quarterback throws it away and it flips from 2nd and 10 to 3rd and 10, right? Or it results in the quarterback checking it down when he could have gone deep to a big play, but that was wiped away because of the pressure. Andrew Berry at the end of the year in his press conference talked about Za'Darius Smith and said, we know the sacks were not there, but we really value pressures. And Za'Darius Smith generated a lot of pressures. And I think it's one of those things where it's kind of like in baseball. When you hit a foul ball home run where you just barely miss on a homer and it just turns foul, you know that the batter is still a good batter, and eventually he's going to start getting into a rhythm. And unfortunately for Darius Smith, he was generating a lot of pressures and just couldn't quite get them down to sacks. But I'm willing to bet on Darius Smith getting back to the sack column if he continues to generate those pressures in 2024. Now, if you don't want Darius Smith, here are some other free agent edge rushers out there. Josh Allen and Brian Burns and Danielle Hunter are the top 3 guys. I think Allen and Burns are likely to be re-signed by their current teams. If not, maybe the Browns. No, the Browns are just not going to be able to afford them because they're going to want contracts bigger or the same size as Myles Garrett. And Cleveland can't dish out 2 of those types of contracts. Danielle Hunter, I think, is going to get too much money for Cleveland to afford. Bryce Huff is an under-the-radar name to watch. Chase Young obviously has some local ties. That's a one to keep an eye on. Jonathan Grenard, his former D-line coach, is now in Cleveland. Maybe that could swing him over to the Browns. You got Darius Smith, like we just talked about. I don't see Clowney returning, that's for sure. And then Uche and Leonard Floyd are some other guys to watch as well. Now, if the Browns re-sign Darius Smith, they'll have a ballpark cap space of $35 million. So they still have some money to spend. We're going to look at what the Browns should do next with that $35 million to spend in just a moment. But first, Game Time, our sponsor today, has an awesome deal for the Dog Pound, which is $20 off with the code BROWNSCHAT. Let me tell you about Game Time first, though. Download the Game Time app and get tickets to your local sporting events, whether that's Cavs, Guardians, a concert, whatever it might be, wherever you might be. Game Time has you covered, and they're giving you all $20 off when you download Game Time and enter promo code BROWNSCHAT. Now, I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video, but if you are trying to catch a Cleveland Cavaliers game or any other sporting event, make sure you use Game Time, because what I love about Game Time is you can get an awesome view of your seat before you purchase your ticket. No one likes showing up to the venue of the arena and having no idea whether you're at the top row, the bottom row, whether you can see anything, or if everyone looks like ants on the field. But with Game Time, you know exactly what you're getting before you even get there. Download Game Time today, promo code BROWNSCHAT. Move number 3, I would make. Sign Tony Pollard. This is not me coming for Nick Chubb's job. I'm team Nick Chubb. I'm team bet on Nick Chubb. I believe Nick Chubb can bounce back from this injury. But we do have to acknowledge the very real and very likely and most likely scenario, which is Nick Chubb is not available for the start of the 2024 NFL season. And in that case, the Browns should have a better backup plan than Jerome Ford. Now, Before we get on with this video, I do want to share a clip with you with you know who it is. It's Pro Football Doc, Dr. Chow. And he caught up with Chase Sr. from Chat Sports during Super Bowl Media Week. And he talked, or Super Bowl Media Week, Super Bowl Radio Row. And he talked about Nick Chubb's knee injury and what he'll go through to bounce back. So let me turn it over to Pro Football Doc.
Nick Chubb, just a gruesome injury early in the 2023 season against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and one of those where you see a defender come down low on the leg, his knee goes a direction that it shouldn't, but a lot of people expecting that to potentially be a career-ending injury. Then they do the procedure, the surgery, and there's hope that he's going to be able to come back. Do you see it that way as well, and can Nick Chubb be a similar player that he was, because he, like Joel Embiid, has had to undergo a couple of knee surgeries as well?
I hope he can come back. Look, I'm sure your followers do some fantasy. I drafted Nick Chubb. Okay, look, love Nick Chubb, but you can't unsee that injury. The reports came out afterwards that it was an MCL injury isolated. I'm like, no, that's a knee dislocation with the entire medial side of your knee disrupted. They've since said he's had a second surgery with ACL. That is a knee dislocation injury. That is very, very significant. I will say this. If Nick Chubb wasn't Nick Chubb, he'd be out of the league. Because Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb, he has a chance, and I hope it happens, to come back. Not week one, maybe late season, maybe next season, to be a pretty darn good player, and I hope that happens, and I hope he exceeds expectations. But I think it would be asking a lot to say that he will be Nick Chubb again. He still can be a very good player, but he was elite of elite, and that's a high bar from a knee dislocation. I would say his knee injury is worse than what you think back to J.K. Dobbins a couple years ago with his knee. He wasn't right the next season that he came back. It took him to the second half of the season. He wasn't right. Now, of course, the Achilles is a different issue, but this is a higher hill than even J.K. Dobbins, so let's hope he can do it.
There it is. Thank you to Dr. David Chow for sitting down with Chase Sr. and shedding some of his insight on Nick Chubb's injury and his recovery. And that is why I would like to see the Browns sign a running back, and hopefully a running back like Tony Pollard, because Jerome Ford as the starting running back for 4 to 6 weeks, every single game last season with Jerome Ford, it just felt like, man, we cannot wait for Nick Chubb to come back. And I think the Browns would regret going into the 2024 season with only Jerome Ford on this team's roster, minus maybe a low-level rookie holding down the fort until Chubb returns, which is why I think Tony Pollard would be an excellent addition for the Browns. Now, let's talk about Tony Pollard, because he was an all-time fantasy bust this past year. Just got over 1,000 rushing yards, but his average went down from 5.2 to 4 yards a clip. Now, he's still young. He's 26 years old. He's always been a good receiving threat as well. 311 receiving yards last year, 6 total touchdowns, but that's half of what he had in 2022. And all this means he's going to be cheaper. And I ultimately think Tony Pollard was really snake-bitten last year for 2 reasons. One, he broke his ankle at the very end of the previous year. We like to believe that over the offseason, athletes just get like a health boost and they all go back up to 100, but that's not the case. So I think the ankle injury slowed him down. And then Dallas went extremely pass-happy with Dak and CeeDee Lamb. And it worked. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think Tony Pollard, because of those 2 factors, saw his role diminish in Dallas' offense. So I'm open to signing him, and this was Spotrac projected, a 2-year, $13 million contract. May not even be 2 years. You can do him for a 1-year contract potentially. But I would like a better placeholder until Nick Chubb returns than Jerome Ford. And I'm a bigger believer in Tony Pollard than Jerome Ford. Now, some other free agent running backs here. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler, all names to keep an eye on. The Browns are not going to be able to be swinging for Barkley, Jacobs. I don't think Henry. I think Derrick Henry is going to get a decent contract, actually. But Pollard and Eckler, these are 2 names to keep an eye on if the Browns don't feel like Nick Chubb is going to be even close to the start of the season. If they're like, hey, we're not going to have him until after Halloween. If it's not even until November, I'm not interested in Pierre Strong, Jerome Ford, and a rookie holding down the running back room for the first 8 weeks of the year. Go get Tony Pollard. Now, if they've signed Tony Pollard, their cap space gets down to ballpark $31-ish million. Again, rough estimates. So, should the Browns sign a running back? Before we get on to the next 2 steps of my free agency plan after making all those cap-saving moves, S for sign, P for pass. Give me your thoughts down below in the comment section. 4th move, sign Lavonte David, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers linebacker. So, why Lavonte David? One, I've always felt like he's one of the best linebackers in football that just doesn't get enough appreciation and recognition, right? 133 tackles in 2023. He is 33, 34 years old, and he's playing like he's 23 still. He's one of the all-time best coverage linebackers. 4.5 sacks, 17 tackles for loss, 5 pass breakups, 1 forced fumble. Lavonte David can still play at a high level. And if you don't think that older linebackers can still play well, Bobby Wagner went down to LA after the Seahawks moved on from him and had the best season any linebacker had that year. And the Seahawks regretted it so much they brought him back. So I'm a believer in Lavonte David can still play at a high level. Now, we do have to have a difficult conversation, which is, what does that mean for Anthony Walker and Takitaki? Anthony Walker carries a much bigger role in that locker room. He's a huge leader, and when he's not on the field, his absence is felt. But my concern is, what's your confidence level in Anthony Walker's health? Because if your argument to re-sign Anthony Walker is the Browns play better with Walker than without, okay, I get it. But if you think / have good reason to believe he's going to miss time, then why even put yourself in a spot where you are dependent on him when all he's been like accountable to do for the last 3 years in Cleveland is miss games? And hey, injuries suck. I'm not assigning blame to him, but we do have to acknowledge that he has missed a lot of time in Cleveland. And if, you like the Browns defense with him more than without him, I get that. But maybe they should find a different middle linebacker, period, and one that can play the full season. Now, here's what I think Lavonte David could go for. A simple 1-year, $5 million contract. Given his age, I don't think he's going to be able to command a lot of money in free agency. And then add in the fact that linebackers just don't get paid a whole lot. Lavonte David steps into the middle of this defense. He helped the Buccaneers win a Super Bowl. I'd love to see him help Cleveland win a Super Bowl as well. And if the Browns do sign Lavonte David, along with the other moves that we made, their updated cap space would be about $28 million. So, $28 million after making those 4 moves. They still have some more money to spend. They are not going broke. So, with that being said, 5th and final offseason move. Re-sign Maurice Hurst. I thought about this one for a while, and I'm open to changing it, but for now I'm going to go with Maurice Hurst, and I'll tell you why. You have 3 free agents at the defensive tackle spot. Jordan Elliott, Maurice Hurst, and Shelby Harris. All 3 guys played outstanding, giving the expectations and the overall bar that was set for them going into 2023. Jordan Elliott, of course, like all players in a contract year, had his best season. Maurice Hurst, who has battled injuries throughout his entire NFL career, really felt like he was finding a home in Cleveland. And then Shelby Harris was just an excellent addition to the rotation at his age, but there was no belief that he was going to be a long-term fix at defensive tackle. I think one of those 3 guys is going to return. I don't think it's going to be Shelby Harris. So now we're down to Jordan Elliott and Maurice Hurst. I think Jordan Elliott could get more money in free agency, and the Browns might look at that and go, you know what? We actually like Maurice Hurst better. And so if he's the cheaper of the 2 and our preferred candidate, it just makes too much sense. So how about a 2-year, $5 million contract? That's $2.5 million a season. That's doubling what he made last year. Maurice Hurst is coming off a pec injury that he suffered about 2/3, 3/4 of the way into the 2023 season. Should be ready to roll by week 1 next year. I know he wants to return to Cleveland. I know Andrew Berry is a big fan of his impact in the locker room. For me, it's a perfect marriage. Let's get Mo Hurst back on the Browns and get him with Dalvin Tomlinson, Siaka Ika, and another rookie defensive tackle, and let's roll. Now, the updated cap space after making all 5 of those moves, still $26 million. Again, rough estimate, but if you make all 5 of these moves here, you're going to have some money to spend afterwards. signing Mike Evans, re-sign Darius Smith, sign Tony Pollard, sign Levante David, and re-sign Maurice Hurst. There are some bigger names out there that I did not include because ultimately, like I said earlier, you're not signing Mike Evans, Chris Jones, and Josh Allen. But sign Mike Evans, bring back Smith and Hurst, add Pollard and David, and that's a team I can roll with in 2024. So grade my GM duties, A, B, C, D, or F. How would you grade the 2 re-signs and the 2 additions? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section, and we get to pick a card. So, Mr. Gerard, which card do you want to go with to wrap up the show?
I'm going to be rolling with the 9 of diamonds.
9 of diamonds?
Yes.
For 5 moves, 5 of hearts.
I like it.
Damn it. 3 of diamonds.
Oh.
3 of diamonds. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, taking time out of their day to come hang out with us here at the channel. We will sign off and see you all later.